Welcome to the DTC Insider podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisentul.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider podcast. I'm Brian Roisentul, your host, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Michael Huffstetler. He's the founder of Bask Suncare, a brand that empowers people to discover their purpose, get outside, and enjoy life. Hey, Mike, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. So why don't you start by telling the audience more about you, your background, and your company?
Yeah, I think I'll get to Bask, but I think it's good to kind of start at the beginning because Bask is this interesting intersection of my personal and professional experiences. On the professional side, I have always worked in startups. I've worn every hat that you can imagine within a startup: sales, BD, partnerships. I've run a growth marketing team. Most recently, before this, I was the GM of this place in New York that I think would be best described as kind of an incubator for startups in all different sectors. But being there was really cool for me because that's what really opened my eyes to this whole concept of D2C. You know, it was New York. We had this mandate: get all the best startups in the city. And being New York, a lot of them were D2C brands. So, you know, we had the founders of Billy worked out of there, the founder of Huron, and Jenny Fleiss, the founder of Rent the Runway, was running Jet Black out of there at the time. And just talking to them and seeing them and hearing about their businesses and watching them grow was so powerful. And yeah, I was really turned on by this idea of, I don't think D2C as a business per se, but this idea of competing in categories that were previously assumed to be entrenched by building direct relationships with customers and selling to them directly. So, you know, with that, I started to read all the different blogs and email newsletters out there. I was reading Lean Lux and 2PM on a daily basis. I made a spreadsheet of all the different categories that, you know, maybe I could launch a brand in. Didn't pull the trigger on any, but that was kind of like in the back of my mind for context. And the personal side of this is that I lost my uncle to skin cancer, and he and I were very, very close. He was the coolest guy. He's a man about town in New York. He wrote a page 6 column for the New York Post, and he lit up every single room. So when he passed away, that was a tough experience for me and my whole family, but also an eye-opening experience for me because I never really took my son's safety very seriously before that. And, you know, after that, I started to research everything that I could find about skin cancer. We have similar skin tones, my uncle and I, and you know, I have it in my family, obviously, so I'm particularly susceptible. So in my research, I saw two stats that really stood out to me. Number one is that skin cancer is more diagnosed than all other cancers combined, which is kind of wild considering how objectively preventable it is. The other stat: 54% of Americans never wear sunscreen under any circumstance. And so there's this huge disconnect because we have the most diagnosed cancer, we have a proven to be effective, widely available prophylactic in sunscreen, and people aren't using it. And so I joke around that I accidentally started Bask, and that's not, too far from the truth, because the first thing that I did to solve this problem was I started a nonprofit. It's called the Skin Protection Foundation, SPF for short. The whole idea was, let's go to beaches and public parks, give people sunscreen for free. We'll be the first organization in the world that's fighting skin cancer on the front lines. And it was only when I went to go find a sunscreen partner the product that we'll give out to people at the beaches, that I had this aha moment in the aisle of a CVS. I'm doing diligence and I'm like, holy shit, sunscreen sucks. This is an archetypal D2C play. We've got stodgy brands, commoditized products, questionable ingredients, terrible messaging. And so high level, my wife, who's my co-founder, she and I were like, what if we built a better for you sunscreen wrapped in a beautiful brand that really appealed to young people, and turn sunscreen from this like boring chore your mom made you do when you were a kid into something that was fun and fashionable and cool. And then in doing so, can we get more people to wear it? And if we can do that, can we then fund this nonprofit effort with our sales? And so, with that, the idea for Bask was born, and we ran with it. And I'll skip over a lot of details, but we launched it on National Sunscreen Day in May of 2021, and we haven't looked back.
Wow, what a story. I mean, congrats on doing everything you did. It's very noble that it started with a nonprofit, trying to do some good for people that weren't even taking care of themselves, right? So that's nice. So I got a question based on what you said. Why do you think that you could be different? You mentioned that these ancient brands with ancient products. How did you picture that initially? How did you say, hey, we can pull this off and stand out because of X, Y, and Z?
I think fundamentally, it came down to the fact that all the brands that I was seeing in the category were boring. There was nothing that was creating any type of emotional connection for me. There was nothing that I saw that made me feel happy or there was anything fun to it. And so in that observation, it became very clear, hey, there's a real opportunity here. In terms of how to be different, I think we did that on the product side, and I can talk more about that. But I think the big thing, especially in consumer that is very much purchased in person, you really have to do that on the packaging and brand side. And what we did was we basically took all of the creative and all of the social media that we could find for every single existing brand. And we mapped all of the characteristics of all of those brands and we put them into buckets. And we just said, okay, let's be the exact opposite. I mean, that was the big thing. If you're in a category that you think is ripe for disruption, or the folks the folks who are in there, the incumbents aren't doing anything interesting, just try to do the opposite. Instead of being, overly beautified, instead of being really medicinal, instead of having like an upscale drugstore feel, instead of, putting MD at the end of our name, we decided we're going to be fun. We're going to be tongue in cheek. We're not going to take ourselves too seriously. We're going to have super vibrant colors. We're going to have, these really cool, retro photography. And, we're going to take this like sunscreen, but make it fashion approach, which nobody had been doing in the space. And that would be, how we would stand out and get people's attention at first.
Yeah. And I think of the fact that many people nowadays say that building a brand is not something that is worth it up until you do 10 millions in revenue or something like that. What would you say to those people?
I would say that it's hard at the beginning, for sure, at least. But I think if you're doing something that you're passionate about, I think it's really rewarding at any level. And I'll say, for us and for me personally, like this is the hardest I've ever worked. This is the least money I've ever been paid from, a salary perspective. Um, and it's the most fulfilling work I've ever done. I leap out of bed despite, the stress involved with starting and running a business and a brand. And it all comes back to that why. And the thing that gets me excited is the reason that we're doing this. We have a mission. Let's, as naively ambitious as it might sound, like, we want to end skin cancer. And we'll get there, ideally, to those, revenue milestones that are, incredibly compelling. But in the meantime, like, we donate 10% of our proceeds to not to nonprofits that are helping fight skin cancer. And some of the direct donations that we've done have been just amazing. We've donated literally hundreds of thousands of units of sunscreen to organizations that support low-income kids that couldn't get their own sunscreen. We work with the Fresh Air Fund out of New York. They take kids from low-income families in New York City, and they bring them out to camps and after-school programs. And our only ask of them is, hey, give them their own sunscreen that's theirs and teach them about sun safety. And that's phenomenally rewarding, especially considering that 30% of cumulative UV damage happens before the age of 18. So, I think the big thing, and I think this is a big differentiator too, if we go back to, how to stand out, having a reason for being is really important. It's important for a founder, for your, mental sanity. It's important, I think, for the consumers too. I think people are done with just more junk in the world. There's a great TED Talk by Simon Sinek that he talks about. This is the core of Nike and the core of Apple. People don't buy what you do or how you do it. They buy why you do it. And for us, we have a very, very clear why that people have really responded to. So, having that why is, at least for me as a bleeding heart millennial, is fundamentally important.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Two things to highlight for the audience. One, having a mission, the importance of having a mission for you as a founder will, based on what you're saying and what I believe as well, will change the whole thing. It will have the whole thing will have a different meaning for you. And communicating that to your customers will have a different meaning for them as well. And that's also the way you stand out, because you will become otherwise just another, product on the shelf for people to choose from. And if they know why, if they know about your mission, if they want to support you, if they share the same values, and you become something else for them, you become something different. And that's the way you can stand out in a crowded market, in a red ocean right now. With some exceptions, like only few exceptions, every single product already exists, right? Again, there's a few exceptions, but chances are that if you're starting a brand, you're already selling something that somebody else is offering. It could be better, worse, but it exists. So brand is how we stand out, and brand involves, of course, the mission, the values, etc. So I think that's great. You mentioned the numbers as well. You talked about, money, salaries, revenue. So I wanted to ask you about that. I discussed in one of the latest episodes with Neil Goyal at Tapcart the importance of profitability for brands of all sizes, actually, right now. So what do you think about that? Do you think that is it feasible for you to be profitable in the first order? Do you aim for being that, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think profitability is really important, at least net margin profitability and gross margin profitability. I think, at least for the time being, gone are the days where consumer brands are getting funded like software companies. And, it's kind of the only way to build right now, unless you have absolutely ridiculous traction. But even if you do, if the fundamentals of the business and the fundamentals of your acquisition aren't lining up, then you're not going to be around very long. And so for us, this is a long-term play, and we don't, we don't want to just be some quick win. Like, we really have some important work to do, and we want to build something that's long-term sustainable. And in order to do that, um, being first order profitable is super important for us. We don't have a strong subscription play, at least right now. We're a pretty seasonal category. People tend to buy more in the summer than they do in other months. And so it's especially important for us. And every founder that I talk to is shifting here if they're not already here. And the reason being that there's not as much capital in the category right now, so you can't just fundraise and fundraise and fundraise and then figure out how to get profitable later. You either need to be there, or you need to have a very, very clear path to that you can communicate. And so for us, we just try to be first order profitable. And I think, if you're not going to be that, then the alternative is to have a very, very clear understanding of what your LTV is, and also a very clear understanding of how quickly you can get to your break-even point. And I would say that those are the two things that you really have to understand: is either how to be first order profitable, or how to get to break even quickly if you're playing a CAC to LTV game.
Yes, I agree. And based on conversations that I have had with multiple founders and clients as well, I think it could be both of them and not one or the other. And I will explain why. First, I think it's very important for brands that can be profitable the first order to be so, because why not, right? And even if they can, for most of them, it's not how they make real money. Like on the first order, they are profitable, that's great, but the bulk of the money comes from the repeat orders they get. Again, depending on the industry, etc. So it's great to be profitable in the first order if you can, but even if you are, it's very important to try to, let's say, decrease the time between the future orders, try to encourage customers to order more times a year. I think in your case, and correct me if I'm wrong, should be probably educating customers on the importance of using, screen care or sun care during the whole year, and not only in summer because of the you know the global situation and the global warm, etc. So what do you think of that? Are you guys active on not only being profitable in the first order, but also to encourage repeat orders as well?
Yeah, and that's the real key, and something that we're really focused on figuring out. And I would say the first thing that we were really focused on figuring out was how to get to first order profitable. And it wasn't always the case for us. It wasn't like day one we had this CAC that was amazing, and we had this great AOV. We were losing money on first order for a while, but we were constantly hacking away and testing to get our average order value up and to get our acquisition costs down. And we've got this great graph that shows the two, and then it just separates. And that's where it's like, okay, now we've got some momentum that we can play with. And then one of the very important keys to driving up that AOV and getting our blended customer acquisition costs down was our owned and operated channels. We put a ton of focus on email. We put a ton of focus on SMS. We put a ton of focus on our organic social. And that allowed us to convert a lot of folks who were sitting on our list who hadn't converted yet. But it has also allowed us to drive our second and third purchases. And so now we're in this phase two of getting a good sense of how quickly someone moves from first purchase to second purchase to third purchase. And what we're trying to do now is to minimize those gaps, have a quicker first to second and a quicker second to third. Because what we've seen is that a 2-order purchase customer is phenomenal magnitudes better than a 1-order. But if we get somebody to purchase 3 times, they are absolutely phenomenal and very, very sticky for us as a business. So figuring out how to move them from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 is our real big focus right now, and to condense the time frame between those orders. And we've got some new products coming pretty soon that we think will help us lower that time to 2 and 3.
Awesome. One thing to highlight for the audience about something you said is that it was a combined effort in order to increase the profitability in the first order. It wasn't just decreasing the cost per acquisition, but it was also increasing the AOV. That's very important because some people choose only one side of the equation or one battle, which is, let's try to aim to a lower CPA or something like that. But it's also combine it with the highest lever or the highest opportunity, which is to increase value, because you can decrease the cost per purchase, but only so much, right? Because you control the channels, but how much can you decrease the cost per purchase actually? But on the flip side, you can increase the AOV. I mean, the sky is the limit. You can be creative with you said you tested offers. I don't know if you tested bundles, but whatever, took the AOV to be higher than it was. I think that helped way more, right?
Yeah, it definitely, and it was the one that was actually far more, to your point, within our control. So we saw movement on AOV before we saw movement on our customer acquisition costs. And then once the two were going at the same time, it was great. And so things that we did, we started doing a bunch of bundling. Bundling was a big unlock. Another thing that we did was we raised our free shipping threshold. Duh, right? But we didn't think about it for a while, but we raised our free shipping threshold. Simultaneously, we raised the price of shipping underneath the threshold by like $3. We moved it from $4.99 to $7.99, and then we did a $50 free shipping, and up from $40, which, especially considering the cost of an individual unit of Bask, did a lot for us on the AOV side. And then we started to run a lot of gift with purchase campaigns. And so once a month, we had a gift with purchase campaign running. And typically to get the gift with purchase, you only had to reach $40, which was still $10 beneath the threshold. And that really helped us juice the AOV as well. But yeah, AOV was definitely the lever that we hit first, that made the initial impact, that helped us to sustainably, at least in the performance channel, acquire customers.
Yeah, I can imagine that for many brands, doing that could be, frightening, because they might be afraid of losing customers if they increase the threshold for, I don't know, the shipping threshold, or if they increase some other, things for people to buy. So I know that people sometimes are scared to change, but these are things that prove over and over to be, positive in the short term, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think we've got a couple of formulas that we use internally. We think about revenue as simply an output of a bunch of other inputs. And one of our core formulas is customers times frequency times AOV. And if you think about, I want to double my revenue, you can double any one of those inputs, or you could increase them by 33% each. And you can really start to take bite-sized chunks out of how to grow your business. And AOV is just it's the unlock that's most in your control. And has, unless conversion rate plummets because of something that you're doing, AOV is the tool that's most in your control towards getting those revenue outputs that you'd like.
Yeah, very true. And I like that math you have internally or that formula. Talking about acquisition now, I know last year you did something in the eyes of many brands or marketers unusual, let's say. So, what did you do for Black Friday last year and why?
Yeah. So we've just kind of been in this like limbo state of how to approach Black Friday and Cyber Monday, because interestingly, we have an asymmetric high season versus everybody else, because our high season is the summer and everybody else's is Q4. And one of the great things about how we position our acquisition is that we pay less than most people in our high season. So that's great. And so when we look at Black Friday and Cyber Monday, we're like, okay, it's unbelievably competitive. Not like with other brands in our category, but every single brand on the internet. It's super expensive. And, is it worth it? I guess is kind of the question that we keep asking ourselves. And we've done a bunch of different things throughout the years. And, we've paid, and run meta ads promoting our deals and run them across all these different affiliate sites and things like that. This year, we decided we're not going to do any of that. We're going to turn ads off. We've got a big enough email list at this point. Why reward all of these new people who don't have any affinity, have never supported us in the past, with some really, really deep discount? What if we just say to our customers, hey, thanks for being here with us. And we're going to give you a deep discount for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So that's what we did. And, I wrote a post about this on LinkedIn that got a decent amount of attention, got a lot of comments, people sharing their perspective on it. And, I'm not sure if we'll do it again or not, but the results were interesting. And we had phenomenal sales days. We converted a lot of customers from that ever important 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 that we talked about before. We got a lot of folks off of our list who were dormant and who hadn't purchased before, who did purchase. And we literally spent $0 on advertising and had a really nice month as a result of this campaign in what should be one of our slowest months of the year. So there were definitely some pros and cons to it. And I think the thing that we continue, and I would love your thoughts on this, like, just discounting in general. I think it's something in e-commerce that has become just something that you assume you have to do and should do. You should run a discount to get people onto your email list. You should run Black Friday, Cyber Monday because everybody else is doing it. And I wonder if that is the play. I think especially if you're building for something long term. So we've got a lot to figure out there still, but that was our approach to Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year.
I love that you did what many brands always, try to do and never do. It's like, oh, I'm tired of Meta, I'm tired of Google, I will turn off the ads. We'll do it and see what happens. And it did it, and it worked great. This is my point of view. I'm not right or wrong. This is just the way I see it, right? I think that based on the results, you definitely don't need to pay for getting orders from your existing customers. That's clear, right? You got great results, great feedback. I don't know if you would have gotten more orders from those people with paid ads or not. We will never know. But if you got great response, a great number of orders from them, it's clear that for them that works. You don't need to pay an extra if you don't want to. Now, I am a believer that we can have in today's era of digital marketing and marketing in general, segmented messages, offers, and many other things for different people, right? Different groups of people. So do you need to offer the same discount to people who are new? No. If you don't want to, no. Can you offer a lower discount? Yes, if you want to, of course. But is it possible to avoid, let's say, rewarding them in a different way than those who've been loyal to you for years? Yes. So if in a low season you can pay for acquiring customers when they are in a mood for buying whatever comes to mind, in this case, something they need, you can make them aware of the problem they have, which is using this product in a season, in a time of the year that is not, a no-brainer for many people. Like it's a no-brainer when you go to the beach, when you go to a pool, when you go outside in the summer, but not in winter or in autumn, right? So it's problem that the message should be like a problem aware type of message. Like they are problem unaware. Like they are not even aware of the problem they have, many of them, right? So I think that if you ask me, I would probably pay for those people and offer them something lower and see if the same works for the email. I would also, I don't know if you did this last year, but I would probably do something to encourage people to be on the list and receive something better, right? Or to be a part of your community, whatever that is, if it's a Facebook group, if it's an app or whatever, but to be a part of your community so they can receive something else. So you can segment that even more, like non-customers or not in your list, non-customers who are in your list with a different discount as well between them, and customers, which of course they are in your list. So that's the point of view. And then last thing I will say, and I will let you talk, I promise, about discounts.
No, this is interesting.
I recently read something about cashback instead of discounts. There's an app for this. I don't remember the exact name, but I will add it to the show notes, which encourages people to do either one of the two options to claim the cashback on their credit card instead of the discount after they buy, or to receive that money in store credit. The thing is based on these people is that many people don't claim either. Like they don't claim the money in either ways. And some people claim it in store credit. So you get the money, let's say, back because you own the money, they have the credit to spend, but it's a repeat purchase, but upfront, right? I'm not saying, and they are not saying either, that you shouldn't do any discounts at all, but can you reduce discounts? Yes.
Yeah. Uh, I think that I think ultimately there's some sort of hybrid out there, and I think that's what we'll probably end up doing next year. Some element of what you said of, kind of your very, very top of funnel folks runs and paid, run a discount, but it's a different discount than the people who are on your list, who you really should reward since they're your customers. Now you don't want to train people to wait for discounts, obviously, but something nice, and maybe it's very specific to the holiday season. Maybe it's you work on some new gift with purchase, and it's a discount plus a gift with purchase, and that becomes your kind of your Black Friday, and then so you've got a hybrid solution that addresses various parts of the funnel simultaneously, and that's how you roll it out. But then you also have the folks like Ryan from Jolie, the showerhead company. I follow him on LinkedIn. He's a great follow, and they're doing so well. And he says no discounts ever. We're not giving away for our email list, and there's something compelling about that as well. So
Yeah.
it's something you got to figure out as a brand. Chanel is definitely not giving out discounts, and they've been around for a long time, been very successful. But I think what we'll end up doing next year, to kind of wrap a bow on this, is to do some sort of hybrid that addresses various parts of the funnel in different ways.
Yeah, I think when there's something deep in your values, mission, or whatever, which is, I don't know, no discounts policy. I don't know. It can even become a part of your marketing and attract people rather than repel them. But when you're, you don't necessarily be that or at that position with discounts, you can be at that position with something else, right? Like use sunscreen always, all year long, every day. And here's why, like no sunscreen, like you use sunscreen, right? So there could be different positions for different things. And I think something you said is interesting for the audience to notice, just in case they didn't, which is the benefits on Black Friday. Of course, people expect discounts, but that's not the only thing that you can offer to them. You can offer gifts, you can offer giveaways, you can do many more to add value to your community that has been loyal forever, right? So you can offer them different uh, things they value to avoid perceiving that you're offering the same thing to a stranger than to them, right? So I think there's a place and channel for everything. So I think that segmenting the communication, it's awesome. The same happens with your customers. Some people I interviewed or clients I work with, they do different strategies and messaging for the levels of customers they have. They have, like, let's say, customer categories internally or something like that. So some of them write handwritten notes, different ones for each order to with them. Some of them call it VIP customers. Some of them call all customers or many customers randomly. So some people have product testers. So they before releasing a product to the public, they have this group of people. The group has a name, it has an identity, it has and they love the brand and they accept their feedback in order to innovate before mass releasing the products. So do you have any of that, by the way? I don't know, do you incorporate customer feedback on on some point and in any way?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love handwritten notes. We do a lot of handwritten notes at Bask, and we've got, our fun stationery that we made. I think in the early stages of a brand, doing things that don't scale um, is really important. Especially if it's related to making your customer feel special. And it's not just about making them feel special, like they are special. They're your early advocates. Where would you be without the, first 100 purchasers that you ever had, or the first 1,000 purchasers that you ever had? So treat them well, put on the white glove, get them that white glove treatment. So important. So we do a lot of handwritten notes. I think that's a great idea. And also, like, CX, like I encourage founders to be actively involved in customer service and go above and beyond. If FedEx or UPS or the shipper loses a package, that's an opportunity to show your customer how much you care about them. It's not necessarily a bad thing to go and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to send you 2 of them. I'm going to expedite the shipping, and I threw in a hat, because I want you to know that I care about you getting this. I care about you being a customer. I appreciate it. And I'm going to go above and beyond. And that, long term, it creates a ton of stickiness with the brand and that experience. And the bigger you get, the harder it is to do that. So that's something that you can do at the early stages that sets you apart and sets you up for a lot of future success. And then to answer your more direct question about customer feedback, it's everything for us. I'll give you kind of 2 examples of that. First is when we were launching the business, my wife and I, neither one of us came from personal care or beauty or sunscreen. And so we didn't know the first thing about building those products. But we do have and I specifically have a performance marketing background. So I applied that. The first thing that we did was we surveyed 50,000 people. Between my wife and I, we personally interviewed 500. We wanted to find out what people hate about sunscreen. And it took a long time, and it was so worth it because we got so much incredible feedback. We got all of these amazing adjectives, and we built all these word bubbles. But we were able to solve for the issues that people had. And so there were some smaller ones that people didn't like, that sunscreen stings their eyes. Solve for it. People didn't like that sunscreen stains their clothes. Solve for it. Number one, far and away, not even close though, was people hate how sunscreen feels on their skin. And this is where we got all these amazing adjectives. It's oily, it's sticky, it's greasy, it's goopy, it's got a white cast. And so we maniacally focused on solving for that. You're like, hey, if we want to end skin cancer, we need to get more people to wear sunscreen. If we want more people to wear sunscreen, we better solve for that thing that's preventing them from wearing it and reapplying it. And we did 63 product iterations. Again,
63.
Yeah, 63. And again, we were getting customer feedback the whole way through the process. We were doing, I guess you call them focus groups. We had these, groups of people at each formulation. We'd go and we'd test it. And we didn't stop until 95% of them told us, love how it feels on my skin, not like or not, think it's okay, but love how it feels. And then we wanted 90% of people to pick us in a blind field test versus the other leading brands that are out there. So like, hey, if we're setting out to do this thing, we better beat the benchmark that's in the category already. So that's why 63, because we didn't stop until we hit those benchmarks. But now we have this data that demonstrates, hey, it really is the best feeling sunscreen. We really did solve for that number one pain point. We really are living out the mission. Number two is we're constantly talking to our customers. We're constantly reaching out just to say, hey, how was it? Did you enjoy it? I try to call or email 5 people a week. And then other folks on the team are also doing the same thing. And we've got kind of like an interview template that we do to get a sense of who they are, what type of media do they consume? How old are they? We know where you live, but like, do you have vacation houses? That's like an important thing for, sunscreen. We just try to build a more comprehensive understanding of who our customers are. And further, we've got a really robust tagging system within our CX platform. And by virtue of these conversations and cataloging all of the outreach that we get, whether it's in a social media comment or in an email to us, we have a really good understanding of what our customers want. And so we were going to launch a face product after our initial SPF 30 lotion and spray. And the feedback was overwhelming that what customers wanted was an SPF 50. So we scrapped face for the time being, and we released an SPF 50 product for them. And our SPF 50 is now our best-selling product. And it's exactly what our customers said that they wanted. And so it's like, it helps to listen to your customers. A, they're going to tell you what they want to buy. And so you can sell it to them. And B, if you learn more about them and who they are, you can go find more of them. And so we think it's creating this feedback loop between us and our customers that goes beyond just, hey, submit a product review that shows up on our site is really, really important.
Look, this is going to be the episode probably 148 or something like that we do in the podcast. I have had many founders say great things about the product development and testing process, and I love all of them. But actually, and truly, you went above and beyond by doing the blind test with your customers. And I love that, because one thing is to say, I iterated X versions of the product or during X years until I found the ideal product. But nobody stopped and said the ideal product not for us, but for our customers. And they actually said that like explicitly. They chose it, in a blind test. So I have never heard of that on the podcast, at least from a DTC brand. So again, I was clapping when you were saying that because I truly wanted to congrats you because it's inspiring to see that you care to the point that you want to say, I want to offer the best. So you let me know and I will stop and I won't stop until I do it. And it's easy to say, it's easy to watch Rocky, like the movie, and watch him succeed and walk through the stairs or run through the stairs and until the top, but it's not easy to do the process in real life. You said 63 iterations. Most people, including myself, probably I would give up after the fifth or the third even, and you did 63.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and yeah, I think a lot of it was born out of um, the fact that we hadn't done a product like this before. We just didn't know, and in sunscreen especially, you've got very high minimum order quantities. So if we're going to go to market with something, we have to make a lot of it, and we have to spend a lot of money on it. And so, we also really want people to enjoy this product. So let's just do the things that we have to do to ensure that we're making a sound investment on the right product and that people are actually going to like it. And, almost like because we didn't have any experience, we took a few extra steps to ensure that we could sell this stuff, right? And getting that direct user feedback again to like the kind of first point, so important. First party data, you know.
That's awesome. That's great. Mike, this has been great. I know we are on time, so I want to be respectful with your time. I wanted to thank you for coming to the show. And before you go, I wanted to ask you one thing I like asking every guest that comes on the show, which is if you have a favorite book that you would love to share with the audience, a book that you love that helped you in any way.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a book and I've got a podcast, or sorry, a TED Talk, not a podcast. The TED Talk is the one I referenced earlier, the Simon Sinek Start with Why. There's a book version of it too, but you just need to see the TED Talk, and I just think it's great. And then the book is Scaling Up, and it's by Vern Harnish, and it was really helpful for me. This is my first startup, and he gets into a lot of um, the nuance of running the business. And I think it's especially important. It's important for every business, but I think it's especially important in consumer products, cash conversion and cash flow and your cash conversion cycle. And reading this book was really, really helpful for me to get that under control in this business and turn it into an advantage for us instead of a scramble.
That's a great one. And another one related to being profitable first is Profits First. I don't know if you read that one.
I haven't, but I will.
Yeah, it was recommended by some founders here already, and it's a great book. It's all about, of course, being profitable first, and it's not only about math, but it's about the way you think, the mindset of being profitable first, and how you start by saying, "Hey, this is what I want to make," the net margins, etc., and then, okay, here are the expenses, here are the things that I need to have so I get this result. But it all starts with the profits. So it's a great read for anyone looking for that. And scaling up is great as well. So thank you again for being on the show. I wanted to ask you before we go, where can people find you and your company?
Yeah, great question. BaskSuncare.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Bask_Suncare. I don't know when this episode is airing, but starting March 1st, you can find Bask at Nordstrom nationwide and about 1,000 other brick and mortar retailers throughout the country that are boutiques and at hotels.
That's awesome. As a coincidence, you will go out on that date. So So as for today, you can go and find the products there. So for everyone who is not on the website, please go to the dtcinsider.com. You will find the episode, and there you will find all the show notes, including everything Mike mentioned, the books, resources, and everything else. Mike, again, I wanted to thank you. It was a lot of fun and you delivered a lot of value. So I wanted to thank you again for being here in the show.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I really enjoyed it.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.